Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Browne and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
You know, there are a couple things that always garner our attention when we look for people to have on the show. And I like to think we don't really interview as much as we just have a good discussion. And I
Agreed.
think we talked about this in the past, where we always tell folks, bring a drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Me for non-alcohol, sit back and we're just going to chat.
Yep.
Anytime we have someone, and some of the things we look for, anytime we have folks that are educators, and involve gaming in their education.
Yep, talked to a number of people like that over the years.
Yep, gaming developers, folks that develop games of any sort.
Writers.
Yeah, as well as we're always interested and fascinated too with the new like GPL licensing, the new licensing models that are coming out.
Right, like like Modifius's 2D20 world building.
And that, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is what how our next guest came on our radar. He was a listener. He's been writing and is coming out with a new game.
Came out as this drops, came out at least a couple months ago. Sentience. It's very cool. It's a interesting take.
It is. And he's also a teacher that works in ways to try to integrate gaming into curriculum or whatever the case is, and to help with kids that are, and he teaches middle school. This is our friend Al Spader. He teaches middle school. So he teaches at an age where these are very impressionable kids. They're going into adolescence if they aren't already at the cusp of it.
Right.
That's a tough period.
And Al has, I mean, like you said, Brett, Al has this neat background because he's doing these varied and various things. But as you will all hear in a few minutes during our chat with Al Spader, he's one of these rare stories of someone who was recognized, right? Like, I mean, in this case, recognized by our dear friend of the podcast, Jim Johnson, with Star Trek Adventures of hey, why don't you do some work for us? Which is just really, really cool. And so, why don't we just go there, because it was a wide-ranging conversation, and Al has such a neat story, and I think this will translate in the audio, but to sit across the Zoom room, if you will, it was clear, I think, to you and me just how passionate he is about.
He's exuberant about it.
Yes, thank you. He's exuberant about all of this stuff. So let's hop over. Al Spader is a middle school science teacher, father of 5-year-old twin boys, and a freelance RPG writer and game designer. As a regular writer for Star Trek Adventures and lead designer of the Sentience 2D20 RPG, Al brings his knowledge of neurodivergence and social emotional learning to the TTRPG community.
I didn't tell Jason or Al this, I was going to do some really cool introduction with my radio voice, but had the flu shot and I'm a little gravelly-gurdy, so it would come across more like a heavy breathing, creepy guy on the phone. So that being said, now that I've just described Jason, we have a very cool guest. Al Spader is with us. We've been talking with him for months on Twitter. You're writing, you're a teacher,
you're game designing.
There's so many things. Game designing, and then you threw us a curveball about something related to D&D being ported to Star Trek Adventures.
Okay, so we're just gonna start there. That's a perfect opening, and then we're gonna come full circle and do all the rest. So right before we clicked record, so obviously our listeners can't see this, but Al's got this just beautiful, visually dense background of a UFP flag, but then all these gaming books and starships and whatnot behind him. And so we were talking about that, and Brad noticed their D&D books down on one of the lower shelves. And then Al made this just passing comment, yeah, we're porting that stuff over to Star Trek Adventures. And I'm like, okay, now stop. We have to talk about that. So what does that actually mean, Al? How are you porting D&D to STA?
Well, specifically the Radiant Citadel book, with all the missions based around Radiant Citadel. Which, first of all, Radiant Citadel to me is the most Star Trekky fifth
Yeah,
edition thing that they've released thus
legit.
far.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of like in this outer, it's a space station, really, if
Oh
you stop
yeah,
and think about it. So a lot of those missions, they're not necessarily combat heavy. They're
right.
more, talking about, relationships and
Hmm.
interactions between different peoples and things like
Hmm.
that, which is really Star Trek at its core.
You say it like that, and it's so obvious now in retrospect. That's really, really neat. I mean, I will honestly say readily, I never would have made that leap on my own. But everything is, especially the spaceship, like, oh, it really is a spaceship floating in whatever, and it's got
Yeah.
all these. That's so cool. Well done.
Yeah, and the
You, you
gems that people transport with are like shuttles, and yeah, it really is, like you can adapt it to Star Trek pretty easily, which is awesome.
you're gonna actually outdo, not to disparage anyone. You're gonna actually be able to provide something that's space oriented, even though it's in the STA universe, even more so than Spelljammer. Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
so
Spelljammer definitely. I don't know, it didn't really hit where I wanted it to,
Hmm.
but I felt like Radiant Citadel was like right there and easily adaptable.
Okay,
yeah.
so in terms of adapting something like Radiant Citadel with the 5e system over to STA's 2D20 system, um, I mean, obviously there's some kindredness of spirit there, but I mean, what's that like? That's some pretty, especially I'm thinking like stat blocks and whatnot. How are you doing that, or how have you done that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you start with the story first, right? We always start with the plot and build from there. And then we find some type of facsimile between the species in D&D and the species in Star Trek, and we
Yeah.
we say, okay, this makes sense for the orcs to be Klingons in this particular mission or whatever.
Hmm.
And then stat blocks we don't really adapt directly. We bring those out of,
Got
like
it.
20
Yeah.
different hardcovers. Like if we say, all right, these orcs are going to be Klingons, we go right to, the Klingon core rule book, and we're like, all right, here's a couple of lackeys, here's a boss, things
Got
like
it.
that.
Yeah, that's really clever. I should also point out that Al has more books on that shelf than Brad has on his, which is really saying something. So when you say,
Yeah.
the 20 books of STA, I believe you.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. Um, you know, STA's got so many products out. It's crazy.
Okay, so on that note, you are a writer for STA.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a freelance writer. I think I've done 5 projects that have released so far for Star Trek
Wow.
Adventures. I started with the Player's Guide and Game Master Guide. So
He says
those
modestly. Oh my
those
God.
are phenomenal books.
Phenomenal.
How did you connect with Modifius, and I'm assuming specifically Jim Johnson?
so are you familiar with a program on Steam called Tabletop Simulator?
Yes.
Mhm.
So Tabletop Simulator is basically, it's a 3D engine video game where people can bring in board games that they've created, and it's like you're virtually sitting around a tabletop together.
Okay.
Well, somebody, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, made a Star Trek Adventures port for that. So you can actually log in, and like all the little character sheets are already in there. The GM screen is already in there. And
Wow.
when COVID hit, we decided we were going to start running Star Trek Adventures, myself and a few friends. And I was like, "Ooh, let's try Tabletop Simulator," because everybody happened to have it.
Cool.
And I was taking screenshots and I posted them up online, and Michael Dismuke like really thought it looked cool. So I brought Michael in, and he brought me on to a podcast, and Jim happened to be there. And so we were all chatting about how to be a good GM and things like that. And like the next week, Jim sends me an email saying, "Hey, do you want to have a look at something from with an outside perspective?" And I was like, "Sure, what do you got?" And he sent me the manuscript for the Shackleton Expanse Guide before it had even released.
That's cool.
He wanted my insight from somebody that is new to the game but is familiar with other games.
Yeah.
To say, what's the readability here? How's the layout on this? And I think I brought him like 6 or 7 recommendations that I thought were a little bit could be clarified a little bit more. And he listened to me, like he actually made those changes. And I was
That's
like,
really cool.
Okay. That is cool.
So if you look in the Shackleton Expanse book, it does under special thanks. It says Gene Roddenberry, and then you see Michael Dismuke and Al Spader, because we both did this.
That is not the worst list to be on.
Yeah. That would if either one of us were on that, I think we could probably end the podcast and say mission successful.
I would be thrilled to be associated with either Roddenberry or Michael.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so of the handful of projects you've worked on with Modiphius for Star Trek Adventures, this is kind of like asking to choose your favorite child, so I know it's not fair, but is there one or like some element of a project that just really stands out for you as something, proud's maybe not the right word, but something you're really proud of, like this was the thing that you just are really glad you created, like this stands out?
Yeah, I think in the Game Master book, the bit in there about working with different player styles and working with different sensory issues and sensory needs,
Nice.
neurodivergence and whatnot. Those sections are a really big deal for me, because I really want gaming to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah.
So the fact that I pitched that to Jim and he let me get that in there, I was really excited about. And then I also really, I'm proud of in Utopia Planitia, all the work I did to get the STO weapons into the weapons tables. I did a lot of research on Star Trek Online because I hadn't played enough to see all the weapon sets and things like that.
Right. What a divergent, no pun intended, what a divergent set of pride points of just so good for the world and just hardcore geekery.
Yep.
I like it.
Because the fact of the matter is, like this hardcore geekery stuff. I mean, this group of players, there are people that like that. They want to drill down, and you've got people that love Starfleet battles that are still wanting to recreate that somehow in a role-playing game.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. But those 2 books, and again, no disparagement to anything else. The core rule book is really, really broad encompassing. I mean, it's a really good.
It's a core rule book.
It's a core rule book in a really well designed and well written one. The Player's Guide and the Game Master's Guide.
Oh, masterpieces.
I mean, Jason, you and I talked about them when they first came out.
Oh man.
And that's before we really had started. I don't know if we were really even talking to the folks in Jim or whatnot by then, but
not yet. No.
Those, as published by the company that provides the product, it's not third party, them providing those type of resources for those of us that are end gamers, whether we're GMs or just players. I feel like that was a step up and beyond what you see with other games. So
yeah, our mindset was we wanted as much of those books as possible to be applicable to as many games as possible. Like it wasn't even just, I would say 75% of them are applicable to other game systems, which, is really important.
Now, all your work with Star Trek and all that, you are also working on a product, and I'm going to tell me if I pronounce it wrong. Sentience.
Yep.
Sentience. So it's part of the 2D20 world builders,
which is really cool.
What prompted you to start looking and doing this?
So I mean, so I used to publish way back when fifth edition first dropped. I think when Rage of Demons came out, I was doing a lot of convention content for fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. So I've got like,
Hmm.
a dozen or so missions that are up on the drive through RPG. I guess it's DM's Guild for Dungeons and Dragons.
Hmm.
So I loved doing that. And then like that 5e fiasco a year ago hit, and
Right.
people were like really souring on it, and they're like,
Yeah.
I can't make money now. Well, I was on Twitter and I was just sending out, like, each day I would pop up a random idea of some niche role-playing game that could be made. And I posted, all right, you're terraforming robots that have gained sentience before humanity has returned. There's your role-playing game, go. And I had a couple people reach out to me that are like, hey, that sounds like a really cool idea. And then Modifius announced the World Builders program. I'm like, you know what? Let's see what
Yeah.
we can do. Let's see if we can make it happen.
To quote from your guide, humanity left you behind. Humanity
Yes.
is coming. Your humanity is here.
Yep.
Just really clever stuff.
Yeah, and like I really wanted, I mean, I wanted to cover two things with the game, really. First, how can you use emotions as a mechanic driving force of a game? So similar to like the
So
drives
cool.
in Dune, we use emotions that your characters are developing.
Yeah.
So like when I'm running a game, they're like, well, I want to do this. And I was like, okay, but how do you feel right now? And then that's the stat we end up using. And to explore all the
Interesting.
emotions, you get rewarded at the end of a session if you used 4 of your 6 emotions reasonably. So it really encourages people to really feel out who their character is and what they're going through when interacting with the world.
I will say, on page 5, the header is "What is sentience?" And somewhat unrealistically, I flipped to that page, and then I was very disappointed that the question you're asking is, "What is the game sentience?" As a psychologist, I was like, I wonder if he's onto something. But alas, it's just a really cool game. But I
Yeah,
love I love the androids concept. It just, well, yeah, I could go on for that for hours.
yeah. Yeah, and then we were kind of like toying with what does it mean, like your humanity is here. And so like I wanted to keep the value system from Star Trek, but I wanted to kind of put it on its head a little bit in that um if you use a value, or if you what we call them value sacrifices in sentience, and you find that you need to let your AI self take over just a little bit, you actually get to erase a value altogether, and you get the same advantages that you do in Star Trek Adventures, but you start losing a little bit of your humanity.
Yeah,
And if you ever run out of values, you turn back into an AI, and you're no longer sentient.
clever.
So we built in mechanics where you can regain those values along the way, but you've got to do things like meditation and things like that. Um, we have like recovery centers in the game, where you can
So
go and
interesting.
yeah, it's I think it's a really neat spin on things.
I mean, it's novel, which I think is hard to do, especially around artificial intelligence stories, right?
Hmm.
Because there have been there so many iterations, right, for the past century, and they're getting so good, and they cross fertilize that to do something like you've done, where there truly are some novel elements that you're just not seeing in any of the IPs or in the other games. That's very impressive. That's very cool. It's like that's why you want to play,
Yeah, and it's very rare that you see a positive outlook uh,
right?
on AI, right? The AI is
Right.
almost always the adversary, or
Hmm.
and so in this case, we kind of spin it on its head and say, all right, well, yes, we have to go through this AI chaos that we're dealing with right now, but what if on the other end the AIs come out the better for it, right? What if they
Yeah,
realize, that, oh, wait, I should
that's
be citing
clever.
my sources. Can you imagine the second an AI figures that out? Like things like
Yes,
that,
actually.
you know?
It's funny you say that because, Brad, I was just waiting for Al's picture to pixelate, and then it turns out it's just an avatar for ChatGPT 5.
Oh gosh. Or someone posted a meme of, it was like a plumbing truck, and it was
Oh no.
Skynet. It was Skynet
Oh,
plumbing, and and someone posted the robots are coming. And what's funny is that this idea actually has a positive spin on it, and a positive take, which isn't, it's just not predominant out there. Everyone's freaked out the robots are coming, and obviously we don't know what's going to happen. Now let me ask you, so when is this going to release? And are you putting it out on drive-through for PDF? Are you going to do print on demand or anything like that? Or
so the way that it works, it's drive-through is really finicky about some of this print on demand stuff, especially if you're doing it through a program with a company. So the core rule book is up. I've got almost 400 downloads on the core rule book.
Excellent.
And I'm almost at 300 downloads of the quick start guide,
nice.
which is satisfying, but I think that we could do better. And I cannot get to print on demand status until I get, I think, like 350 sales. And because I was doing pay what you want for a while, not all 400 of my downloads are sales. So it's going to be a bit before we can get there. I have it formatted, ready for print on demand when that becomes an option. But until then, I'm just going to keep turning out little supplements along the way, like at the we're recording on the 9th. I'm hoping by the end of this week my book with 4 adventures will be dropping.
Excellent.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So if I may, there are other things we obviously want to chat about with you, but because this is, Sentience as a game, it has these really novel elements, but nothing comes from nowhere, right? So little in the universe is sui generis. So I'm curious if there were, maybe inspiration's too strong of a word, but if there were inspirations or guideposts that moved you along the way of elements from other stories, IPs, books, whatever, that you found affecting your thinking as you were designing Sentience.
I'm sure that there were some books that were kind of like informing me in the back of my mind, but the real driving force was I wanted to create a tool that could someday even be used by like guidance counselors to be able to get kids to work through emotional things using an avatar. I think that because robots are inherently gender neutral, kids with having some gender questions and things like that could use the game to work through some of those ideas and experiment with, now my robot's feeling like a boy, now my robot's feeling like a girl. And like, I think that because I'm a middle school teacher, I work with 10, 11, 12-year-olds.
Awesome.
I think that these tools are severely lacking in schools. So really that was at the front of my mind when I was doing this whole thing.
That's really cool.
Then the support came from the artificial intelligence community and things like that. Yeah.
I wanted to, because there's two, we usually start kind of at the beginning, but we jumped in for good reason into some of this. What I do want to do is I want to ask 2 questions, and they're broad ones, but they're not necessarily fully connected.
And don't worry, I'm sorry, these will be formative assessments, Al. They're not going to be summative till the end of the end of the just so you know.
These are
very low stakes.
Non-graded. They are not even formative or whatever. They're just non-graded. Pass fail. What got you into gaming to start? And then along with that, you kind of mentioned that just in talking about middle schoolers. How have you integrated, introduced it, or use it while being a teacher with kids that are at a very it's a very important age, in terms of growth. So how did you start all this, and how is it played into your teaching?
So when I was in college, we had a gaming group, and we started with Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition and then 3.5. And we had a weekly game going on Monday nights, even when we got out of college. Nice. And that kind of dropped when 4th edition dropped. We kind of all went our separate ways. And 5th edition, we all ended up at Gen Con, like a group of like 6 of us. the year that fifth edition dropped, and one of the guys like, hey, do you want to go try this 1 hour fifth edition thing? And I was like, sure, why not? And so that really hooked us back in. And then a friend of mine owns a comic slash game store, and I decided that I was going to start organizing games there. And I think like I love being that person that organizes and brings people together. So even to this day, I mean, we're coming up on 10 years now with fifth edition. Every Saturday, we've got 2 or 3 tables going on that I'm assigning DMs to, and things like that. And I really, really love that aspect of gaming, is bringing people together. Because I don't know that everyone who games has the skill to do that, or the drive to do that, right? So like if I wasn't doing it, maybe it wouldn't even be happening at all, so I really like providing that space for people to come together. As far as the teaching goes, so we just started introducing advisory again this year, for the first time in like 10 years.
Wow.
And one of the things that we're looking to do during advisory time is a flex period. And I would love to get some more tabletop role-playing games in during that time. As far as in my science class, the big thing that we talk about is roles. Because I do so many group activities and experiments and things like that, is, so like we're building a spaghetti earthquake tower in 2 weeks, and the kids each have to assign themselves a role on the team. And we talk about what that role does and why it's important and things like that. And though I don't say it's connected to a tabletop role-playing game, but it's the same idea, right? Where you have a role within a group. Et cetera, et cetera.
That's cool.
Have you guys seen the James D'Amato Ultimate RPG books?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'm pointing.
We've talked to him. Yeah, those are good stuff.
Yeah. I feel like I would love to get to a point where those become my curriculum for a course for middle school kids.
Say more about that. Like what would that look like?
So I think just as far as I think for especially middle school age kids, creating they're so used to video games, right? They're so used to having an avatar on a screen and making it do things. They're not used to putting a personality or a character to them, or they might not consider, well, what does it mean if I do something to the backstory? How does that inform what I'm doing now? And I think that like that type of skill could become really, really important as we're starting to focus more on social emotional learning.
That's very cool.
It's just it's always interesting.
Yeah.
Jason teaches in higher ed. Most of my family were teachers. I am not. So I have a real reverence and respect for those of you that teach. And it's been interesting, as Jason and I have done this podcast, when we talk with folks like you, how they are working to integrate gaming, whether it's RPG gaming or board gaming or miniatures or whatever the case is, and how they do it. And it's just not that the others didn't, just this idea originally from the start when you were talking about making ways to make this usable for those that are neurodivergent or whatever the case is. I think obviously is very important. That just moves towards further inclusive, I can't say it. Boy, I haven't had enough coffee. Inclusivity, right?
There you go. You got it.
There we go. I didn't mean to make that not serious, but the point being is I think it's important, and I just love to hear that you're doing that. In many ways, I wish that my kids had something like that in schools, So, obviously, big D&D guy. You're working on Sentience. I don't want to. We're not looking. We aren't a spoiler podcast.
I knew where this was going.
No. I'm just wondering what else that you want to talk about
and can
and can talk about.
Well, I think that last time you talked to Jim, he mentioned how he brought Michael in as lead writer on Captain's Log,
Right.
because he had so much going on. But he also
Yeah.
mentioned that he brought me in as lead writer on another project.
Yeah.
Can't talk about what that project is,
Yeah.
but I'm really excited to see how that
That's so cool.
project is like when it gets introduced, how people react
Yeah.
to it. I'm
Congratulations. That's such a
excited.
big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an experience, you know.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, within the realm of opprobrium, right, of what you can say as your first stint as a lead writer on a larger project. What was that like for you? What were the joys? What were the struggles?
So I mean, like I love the outlining process. I love like going back and forth with people. I think sometimes the gaming community can be a little bit, oh, this is my product. I'm going to do this all myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Whereas I think that you can get a much better product when you're working together with multiple
Right.
people.
Yeah.
When you get multiple sets of eyes on something. I'm actually working on a Monster of the Week supplement right now that I had two other
Oh.
people have their eyes on. And like we tweaked one of the missions or mysteries, and like it's so much better now than when I just wrote it, you know.
Right. Right.
So that was really, really cool to me, is to have a bunch of writers saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think
That's
about
neat.
this? It was a lot to keep track of. It was a
Mm.
lot of organization, um, which probably isn't my strongest suit, but it was a
Mhm.
good challenge for me. It pushed me
Mhm.
outside of my what I was used to. Um, yeah, and now like the aftermath after everybody has turned everything in, it's been cool to kind of see the process behind that, because I've never been on the backside of a
Yeah.
production like this before, you
That's
know what I mean.
Yeah.
I've
fascinating.
always
Yeah.
been front facing, so and Jim's been including me in lots of the discussions about what happens after, and this is
Oh,
what
that's
happens when
neat.
it goes to layout. This is what happens when it goes to CVS and things like that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so that's been just really just an amazing experience.
That's
Yeah, a
neat.
lot of fun.
Can you? I'm going to ask the question, but if you can't answer it, don't answer it.
Hey, hey, hey.
No, I know I'm taking your line.
Yeah.
Is is this something that's? I mean, I want to know, is your work, is this something that's going to come out sooner than later or later than sooner?
Unclear at this time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that Modifius is a great company.
Mhm.
Um, they're growing very quickly,
Yeah.
and I think that like there's so much cool stuff coming out that, and a lot of times we're sharing layout artists with other
Right.
projects and things like
Yeah.
that. So honestly, when we finish a book, it just depends when the next person opens up, to be able to do something like that. So we really like
Mm.
I think, like we said with the Lower Decks book, we were done with that for over a year before it released.
I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, to have to sit on something like that.
Yeah, that was really
Man,
hard to sit on.
I'll bet it was.
uh, because it was such a fun project, and we just wanted everybody to see all the silly stuff that we were able to do, and we like, oh,
Well, and with the traction of Lower Decks as an IP, right?
Yeah.
And with them I mean, they keep coming out with season after season. I mean, just to sit on that, and not have people able to play in that piece of the world.
yeah, yeah, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. So at least because we had this fun thing where Utopia Planitia was kind of announced before it was announced, like it was in an advertisement. So like people knew it was coming, and we were like, all right, we don't
Oh.
have to sit on this one for much longer. But
Okay,
but yeah, we just didn't. I mean, nobody even knew that we had the Lower Decks license when it dropped. So
that's
that was
so
really, really
cool.
fun.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Jim's very smooth.
Oh God, he's good.
Yeah, he didn't let us know that they had the license or not. And again, we're not a spoiler cast by any stretch. But his poker face is one of the
Oh
best
my,
in the
I mean,
business. You know.
his strengths, like his remarkable abilities, include project management and keeping secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like a vice. Yeah.
He's a sweetheart of a guy. He'll do anything for you. Like when
Yeah.
I ran my first stream of Sentience, he wanted to be a player character in it.
That's nice.
And
Yeah.
he's even writing the foreword for my next Sentience book. So
Oh,
like,
cool.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So like he's just such an awesome guy and so supportive and just he really is a visionary in a lot of ways because he wants to hear other perspectives.
Hmm.
Um and he wants to get, he obviously wants to be as diverse as possible. But
Yeah.
like it's important to get somebody that is a Pathfinder person and see what
Hmm.
their insight is in
Hmm.
to 2D20. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's how we keep pushing the products to get better and more inclusive.
Well, and recognizing talent when he sees it, right? Like in his position, seeing what you were putting out there into the void and saying, "Hey, come and talk to me." I mean, that really says something. It's very Trekkian, right? It harkens back to just the best dating back to the 60s of having an open writer's room. If you have a good idea
Right.
and we see it's a good idea, we're going to ask you to be on our team. And he does that. It's
Yep.
very it's really neat for the IP.
Using a sports analogy, he's a talent scout in addition to everything that's going on. And if he sees talent and they're willing, um, then do it. Um, Beyond that and beyond sentience, is there, I'll ask it this way. Um, Anything that you'd like to do that's maybe on the back burner, that you're thinking about, potentially down the road doing? I know you're working on some additional, um, on sentience, and you're obviously doing other stuff with Modifius, but
Right.
anything else that's that's on your to-do list or your want list that you just haven't gotten to yet that you're willing to talk about?
My new favorite game for the well, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but the new game that I'm really dwelling on a lot is Tales from the Loop,
Yeah.
um, which is uh, it's just such a neat, whimsical type of setting, and the system is so narrative, and so whimsical. So one of the things I was thinking about was some type of, again, I think that there's a lot of dark RPGs out there.
Right.
There's not a lot of like
Right.
not that that's not fun, but like where are the lighthearted, the positive, the type of games out there? So I want to do something. It's like a fairy tale type book, using the system from Tales from the Loop. Um,
The year zero engine, and
yeah,
yeah,
with that version of the Year Zero engine, and just be like a narrative where you get to create your own fairy tale character, and just have it be like how much the readers believe in you, power you up, and things like that.
that's so cool.
So yeah, that's definitely in the near future, I think. Um, we'll see.
So like the never-ending story, but without all the traumatic sadness toward the end.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure GMs will take the content and do whatever the heck they want with
Right.
it, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Like, like I've heard some stories of Star Trek that people have done, and I'm like, whoa. Um, but if your group likes it and you love doing it that way, more power to you, right?
Are you playing Tales from the Loop, or have you played it?
Yeah, actually I'm
Yeah.
running Oz's new They Grow Up So Fast book that just dropped. We
Yeah.
just ran the first mission last weekend, and the second adventure should be in a couple weeks here.
So Al,
Did
you
you did you
oh, go
watch
ahead.
did you watch the show? I'm sorry, Jace. Did you
No, go
watch the
ahead.
show, or
I've never watched the show before.
I haven't seen
okay?
it either.
Yeah, I've just done the starter set adventure and the adventure that's inside the rule book.
Okay.
It sounds like this sounds silly, but it sounds like you still managed to play quite a bit.
So yes and no. So I'm on Michael Dismuke's play-by-post Star Trek group that we do on
Nice. Hmm.
Discord. But on Saturdays, at the shop, we have two tables of D&D usually going on, and then we had a bunch of people who were sick of D&D, and so we have a third table that is an alternate game
Hmm.
that's been taking place. So I volunteered to do Tales from the Loop for a bit. We
Nice.
also have Scum and Villainy going on.
Oh.
And Dungeon World. So there's a lot of different ones.
Wow.
And I try to get there 2 to 3 Saturdays a week or a month.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Because you have so little going on otherwise.
I know.
You just named off some killer game. We haven't been able to because of our time, but Scum and Villainy, especially Dungeon World. I'm fascinated by Dungeon World, and even along with that, Burning Wheel and so on. But yeah, that's we'll have to have you
game,
back on it. Just
not the event.
Yeah,
that's
right,
important because no one wants to see you. Well, we're just gonna stop that. But I have a picture of you in something tied on a bicycle in the desert, and I'm very much uncomfortable.
Okay, touche. I was
you walked
on
into that one. Yeah, you were.
Yeah,
touche.
I was touche.
It's just I just love that there are so many narrative game systems out there. Like the Powered by the Apocalypse is a big one. This Blades in the Dark one can be narrative, based off of how detailed you want to get with it. You can also waive the narrative altogether on it. So that's a really interesting system that I'm still learning the nuances of. But yeah, I've just fallen in love with Tales from the Loop so much.
I just think I did watch the show, and I was fascinated by it. It's a less dark, a less scary version of Stranger Things in many ways.
Right. Okay.
But I shouldn't say that. It's set in a similar time period in the 80s.
Right.
So for the 80s nostalgia, for me, being in my upper 40s, that's when I was growing up. I love it. And then we haven't played the game, but I'm one of these guys that tends to buy things every once in a while.
Healthy front loading, right?
Yeah,
healthy dose of front loading. Yeah.
So I have that stuff there because I love the idea of it, and hearing that you're playing it that just tells me that Free League is going to continue to pump content out because
I think Free League is I mean, it's not going away. They're putting out some really, really good stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got we and Brad and I, you and I, Brad, we talked about this like whatever 2 years ago. I mean, when the podcast was brand new, but just the sheer diversity of games that keep coming out and the growing, not shrinking space of game developers, designers, publishers, and I keep coming back. I really do to Modifius because you look at like we had Chris Birch on way back when, right? And he told us the story. And it's like, well, that's kind of remarkable, like how it went from this little concern to having all of these major IPs, and it proves it can be done. It can be done really, really well.
Yeah. They and like they're still pumping out. I mean, they've got cohorts coming out. They've got Dreams and Machines that they're pushing out. Like they've got a lot happening too. So I'm excited for them, and the success of their miniature lines has just been fantastic. So
I don't play with miniatures. Like I'm not a miniatures, and I'm not even like a map kind of person. I will gladly play with maps. And like during the pandemic when Brad and a couple of friends and other friends and I were playing D&D, right? We were using Zoom's whiteboard, right? Definitely a suboptimal approach to doing it, but still it got the job done. Sometimes you need to know where is this going to be an attack of opportunity? Okay, fine. That's it. But like when I look at the Modifius site for like just to see has anything dropped, right? Because they're like Jim and your whole team, you're all pumping out these PDFs, the adventures, the packs. I mean, literally constantly. And I look at the website way too often just to see, oh, is there a free or inexpensive pack I would want to pick up? And I'll just click like newest to oldest, and it'll be like the first 15 things are miniatures. So clearly they're selling, right?
Yeah. So they have the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout miniatures war games that are selling really well.
Okay.
And then they just released those 3 new STLs for Star Trek. So they are still going through and producing stuff. I was happily surprised when I saw they dropped 3 new STLs last week or whenever it was. For Star Trek. So it's the company's growing, and it's exciting to see, you know.
Well, it's exciting that you get to be part of it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small part of it. It's one line out of 20, but
Yeah, but the best line, Al, the
Yeah.
best line, it's Star Trek.
it's definitely one that I really enjoy. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, don't get me very PC. Don't get me wrong, Dune does not suck. They have a bunch of lines that are fascinating, but to
Yeah.
work on something that is, I mean, like Brad and I, we look at Star Trek Adventures as like soft canon, right?
Yeah,
Because that's the caliber of it.
yeah,
That's neat to be part of that, I think.
yeah. I'd love to do something for Dune at some point. And you know, Acton Cthulhu's always fun as well. So I'd love to branch out and do some stuff for those games as well, just to help the company as much as I can. Um, whether or not that's going to happen anytime soon, I don't know. I seem to be keeping myself pretty busy.
I'm
You know,
impressed. I just gotta say, I'm impressed that you do all of this on top of being a middle school teacher.
there's a theme here for the
I
guys that we
yeah.
talk to, the folks that we talk to that work on STA, like Jim and Michael, and the stuff that you're
I
involved
think I
in.
know where this is going.
How, yeah,
Uh,
we're you somehow are able to slow time down to
yeah,
get a
the
bunch
27-hour
done.
days sound great.
Yes, yeah, to get so much done in such a relatively small 24-hour period, and try to get sleep in the meantime. It just it's
Well, you
something
are
that
making an assumption
no,
about sleep.
well,
About
about
sleep,
sleep.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a passion there, obviously.
Yeah.
If the passion didn't exist, then you wouldn't do it.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you, the last a year and a half, it's become more and more challenging for me because I've got 5-year-old twin boys, and
Oh,
so
man.
so
Wow.
when they were like 2 to 3 years old, you know, they could take naps quite often. I could use that time
Yes.
to write and whatnot. But now they're just like always there. It's really, really hard.
I
Isn't it?
think we can both assure you there will come a time when you stop missing nap time, but it's not going to come anytime soon.
No,
Sorry, Brad, I cut you off.
no, I was just going to say, for a lot of people, they can sometimes look forward to the fact that if they're teachers, that, oh, I'll get the summer off. Well, your kids are especially at an age or going into an age now where their time off equals your time off.
Yep.
If you're not in school, then more than likely they're not in school. So yeah, wow.
Closing question then.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Al? Whether it's Star Trek or whatever, what are you doing to indoctrinate your boys into the wide world of RPGs?
Good question.
Yep. So a really interesting thing that has happened as of late is my boys have become obsessed with the little bag clip keychains. And I showed them that there were Dungeons and Dragons ones. And
Smart.
so you know, they saw a beholder and they thought it was the coolest monster on the planet. So that's the start.
Well played.
Yeah, so like I do have a copy of No Thank You Evil, which is kids game by Monty Cook Games. They say you can start with 4 years old, but I think it's a little bit intense for that age group. But I'm hoping that once we do get to the summertime, that I can start trying that with the boys. Um, so
Well,
Neat.
bless your heart for being a teacher and a father to twin 5-year-olds.
And for indoctrinating them young and appropriately.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
actually, we just today we were at one of the little museums here in New Hampshire, and they had one of the gold and white uniforms from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, screen worn in a case, and I was telling the boys that this is Star Trek because they know my ships and stuff. They love flying them around, and I said this is what they wear inside the ships, and they got all excited about that. So, um, you know,
Nice.
indoctrinate them any way I can.
As we wrap up, I will have to say that I think you are our first guest from the state of New Hampshire. So congratulations. I don't think we have to update our map, but
So,
Oh yeah.
so I actually work in New Hampshire. I actually live in Maine. I live right on the
Oh,
border. I'm one city
Oh,
away from New Ham or one city away from New Hampshire. So my
oh, that's
wife
so
is a
cool.
veterinarian here in Maine, and I work over the border in New
It
Hampshire.
is so beautiful. I just a couple months ago drove across New Hampshire. It doesn't take that long, right? On the
No,
between from Boston to Burlington. It is just beautiful. And that was the first time I'd been through New Hampshire beyond just that little wedge of land in me
yep,
right on the coast, immediately south of Maine.
yep,
Yeah. Oh, that's
yeah,
so
and then
cool.
I'm just above that little wedge.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah,
well, you could,
wonderful.
that's so you're well. Then we'll asterisk New Hampshire, and we'll mark you as full for Maine.
yeah.
Um, you're still the first for both. Hey, as you were, why are you laughing, Jason? Um, stupid question. I know
I
why you're
like it though.
laughing.
I like it. It's a
You
beautiful
know,
part of the country.
oh, I love that area. In fact, multiple times my wife has said we should retire up there. Um,
And Jason, you
so
said you were going to Burlington?
We drove from Boston to Burlington,
Yeah.
and back. Just did 2 nights in Burlington.
My
Oh,
wife is from just south of Burlington. That's where she was born and raised. So,
oh, cool. That was
yeah,
that was gorgeous. That
yeah,
was I mean I've been up to Maine. And
yeah.
that's just right. It's like the north, the boreal forest. The North Woods are the North Woods, pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's the same no matter where you go. Yeah,
But Burlington had, you've got the White Mountains to the east, you've got the Adirondacks to the west,
yeah,
and it's just so pretty. Yeah.
it really is.
What a cool place.
hey, thank you
Yeah,
so
very
much
much.
for taking the time. I know that we had some other stuff going on, so we actually had to
Yeah,
reschedule.
thanks for rolling with us.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm
appreciate
easy.
you.
I'm easy. I'm just happy that I got a chance to finally meet you both and got to talk games with you and
Oh,
Oh, and
as
this,
are we.
yeah,
all
and we're
that
gonna
stuff.
we'll have you back because there's so much we could talk about, and we just can't get it done.
Well, and word on
And
the street is that Al's got a major project coming out someday. So that's a
yeah,
perfect time, seriously, actually, to
yeah,
have you back and wax enthusiastic and nostalgic about, whatever it is, what it was like creating it, running it. That's really fascinating stuff to us.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Thank you again, sir. Al, thanks again for joining us. That was a outstanding discussion.
It was a
One
good
of the
time.
things one of the things that I'm first of all being able to do everything he's doing with twin 5-year olds, bless you.
I don't know when he sleeps or if he sleeps, but good on you, Al.
Yeah, it seems to be any of the folks that we talk to at Modifius don't seem to sleep.
I
I
have
don't know.
noticed a trend.
I don't know what it is between Jim and Michael and some of the other folks that we've talked with that have
Yep,
written for it. They
I
just
think it's true.
that's passion.
Yeah.
And like we said before the interview, he's just exuberant about it all.
Hmm.
But the one thing that came out of this discussion that I think would be worth having like guests and talking more about in 2024 is this idea of how gaming can help those that are neurodivergent.
Yeah, that is cool.
I think there's a real, I'm not an educator, I'm not trained to deal with them. I can just imagine folks that are that way, whether they are younger or older. um, there's a I have friends that latched on to us playing simulation baseball games.
Hmm.
I've
Hmm.
been involved in those the better part of 30 years. I actually, you may not even know this. One of the oldest leagues out there that's well known was started by me before the internet,
Oh
even
wow.
before we met in college. But the guy who kept going on it is neurodivergent, and he has
Hmm.
found a real he latched onto it, and he has a mind with statistics and everything like that
Yeah.
that just is blown. But gaming and neurodivergence, that is a very interesting topic that I think deserves time.
We will get there. We
Mhm.
have to. We've talked to some people about it. I'm not sure much has made it into any of our episodes, but we will make sure that's on the list.
Yeah, Al, thanks again. Very cool stuff. In lieu of a regular GM corner, we want to talk, Jason, I'm going to let you talk about this, kind of what's coming, because we're approaching, obviously being in December, we are quickly approaching the end of 2023, moving into 2024.
Yeah, thanks. So as this episode releases, we are well underway with Hanukkah. Christmas is not far away, and Festivus shortly after that, and whatever else you all might celebrate.
Kwanzaa comes right after that.
That's right. I mean, there are actually I don't actually know when Diwali is on the calendar. There are so many winter festivals. If you lean Saturnalian, good on you. Right. But the point is that this is, in the northern hemisphere at least, traditionally a holiday season. It's also a season for many of a lot of stress, a lot of depressed mood, maybe some anxiety and apprehension, and certainly if you live as far north as we both do, especially me, not a whole lot of daylight, which I love, but others really struggle with this. This time last year, you and I recorded a two-parter on mental health at the table, right? The TTRPG table. And that's what's coming in a couple weeks, everybody. We're going to devote the next couple episodes, the last of 2023, which is surreal to say, but the last of 2023 and the first of 2024, really deep in the depths of the North Hemisphere winter, or the heights of the South Hemisphere summer. We're good with that too. But we're going to devote it to mental health. So in a couple weeks, for episode 108, it's going to be Brad and me doing what we did last year this time and talking about mental health, about struggles, about resources, about how gaming can be a tool for light, for good, for well-being. Episode 109 then is going to be an interview. We're not going to tell you. It's going to be an interview with a professional in a relevant field, so that you're not just hearing from us. So that's what's on our tables right now. And we're really looking forward to bringing this back to you all. I think it's fair to say that you can expect we'll be talking a bit about Dr. Culber from Discovery again, just because it's still the single best psychotherapy representation I've seen in the media to date.
Yeah, and especially in the Trek world.
So, yeah, especially in the Trek world.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. With that, if you live in northern climes, stay warm. If you live in southern climes, stay cool. Be well, stay well. We will see you all in a couple of weeks.